Good morning and welcome to Russound. Well, thank you for joining us this morning. We're going to talk about the MCA 88 multi-room controller today. It's locked and loaded. It's locked for your protection, protect your margins. It needs to be unlocked by a Russound certified installer, right? And it's loaded with features. It's packed in the back and inputs, outputs for everything you would ever need to build either just anything from a state-of-the-art 8-zone system in a home to up to 48 zones. You can stack up to 6 of these guys and could build a system all the way out to 48 zones. And when you start using all of the inputs and outputs on the back, you can also expand these systems into beautiful outdoor zones, large outdoor zones, large indoor zones, how many amplifiers, how many speakers. We're going to talk about all that stuff today. And we're also going to talk about the new MBX-PRE streaming audio player that you match up with this guy to provide state-of-the-art streaming also for your Russound MCA 88 system. So again, thank you for joining us this morning. And we have Ben Hardy from Tech Support sitting in this morning. He's going to answer your questions in real time. So we got lots and lots to cover. So I'm going to mute everybody and Ben will answer your questions as they come through so that I can keep on going. So with that, thank you for joining us. Welcome to Russound. The heart of every multi-room system is the controller. It's the multi-room controller. It's the core component that's used to distribute your favorite music throughout the home. The multi-room controller. It's part multi-channel amplifier, part advanced audio matrix. It's the brain of what's called the centralized multi-zone system. Centralized multi-zone system being a system where all of the gear is located in one centralized location, such as an equipment room in the home, or equipment rack, or an equipment room in the basement, or what have you. And that's where your 88 lives and all of your sources and then from there, you'll run Cat5 and speaker wire to every zone in the home that you want to provide music. But it all comes back to a centralized location. The MCA88, it's the box that all your audio sources get connected to. The MCA88, it's an 8-zone, 8-source controller amplifier. As I mentioned, this guy is loaded on the back end. And what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about every single one of these things. We're going to talk about RNet Link. We're going to talk about these keypad ports right here. What are you going to do with those guys? This controller ID switch, RS-232, amplified speaker outputs right here. Buffered loop outputs, signal sensing source inputs on this guy. Also paging available here. Third-party paging. Also, you have Ethernet connectivity right here for content and control. Then also your IR routing matrix. We're going to talk a little bit about routed IR as well. Also digital audio inputs and also preamp outputs for all 8 zones and all these triggers here. What the heck are those? We're going to talk about all that stuff. So let's walk across the back of this guy. What do you say? First of all, as we mentioned, MCA88 is Ethernet connected for programming and for control. And programming, again, we're not talking about programming like back in the old days of CAV. You know, this isn't PC Power Tools. We're talking about web config. It's more configuring, kind of like follow the wizard. Very, very easy to set up this guy right from your smartphone or tablet. 12 channels of digital amplifiers. You have 6 40-watt by 2 amplifiers built in there. 40 watts per channel to 6 zones. As you can see right through here, you have these snap connectors. They're color-coded to match your 16.4 or 18.4, whatever it is you're going to be using. And these guys are removable, so they're very, very easy to connect up those speaker wires and then just plug those guys right back in. But digital amplifiers run much cooler than conventional analog amplifiers. So when you go and stack these guys in an equipment room, it's going to run much cooler for you. Zones number 1 through 6 are powered at 40 watts per channel to each zone. Zone number 7 and 8 are preamp out only. Inevitably, in a system this size, 8-zone type system, you're going to have a couple of zones that are going to require multiple pairs of speakers, right? You're going to have a couple of zones, maybe a great room in the home or a game room or something, or maybe a large outdoor zone where you're going to have outboard amplifiers anyway. So I would recommend that you put those zones on zone number 7 and 8, and then that way you can start running amplifiers, either daisy chain them off of there, or you can run into D850 or 1650, drive multiple pairs of speakers very easily in any zone off of zone number 7 and 8. You also have fixed or variable line outputs for all 8 zones as well. So if I'm going to be using amplifiers on here that are going to be used inside the home to just add sound reinforcement to zones, then I would set this guy to variable so I can control the volume with my app. If I'm going to use these preamp outputs to run into an outboard amplifier where I'm maybe outdoor zone where they're going to have their own volume controls, then I would use a fixed output for that one. So that's what those guys are. That's how they work. And then you have 8 analog inputs. They are signal sensing source inputs. And then you have buffered loop outputs as well. So you have signal sensing inputs, buffered loop outputs, the reason being so that when you stack multiple MCA 88s, you're going to be splitting that source between controllers, right? This source is going to come into the input on controller number 1, then it's going to go out of there to input on controller number 2, and then out of there to input on controller number 3. So you're splitting that signal. And so buffered loop outputs, we'll talk about that in just a second, but what goes in is what comes out, right? Also with the MCA88, there is a port right here for connecting up Bluetooth, the BTC1X. You can run Cat5 from here up to 300 feet and then connect up the BTC1X for Bluetooth throughout your system. This guy, if you decide to use this input right here for your BTC1X, then that would take the place of source number 1 right there. So source 1 would be Bluetooth, okay? And if you decide not to use that, then you can use source number 1 for anything you want. So BTC1X can be located up to 300 feet away, and just put it in a central location somewhere in the home, you know? And the connection, as I mentioned, takes up source 1. If not used, that input can be configured to a different source type, okay? Now remember, in multiple controllers, only one BTC1 is used, and that's in controller number 1. Signal sensing source inputs. These guys listen for audio from all connected sources, because with power management, what happens, right, is if you go to turn this guy on and it's listening for signal from all connected sources, if for any reason it doesn't sense signal from any particular source, it will automatically send a power on command, IR determine, installer determine IR command out and turn that source on for you. So these guys, what they do is they help to keep your system sources in sync. It keeps your entire system in sync with all on, all off. And then buffered loop outputs, as I mentioned, what goes in is what comes out. So you can split that signal between up to 6 MCA controllers, and what the controller number 6 is going to see exactly the same source signal as controller number 1. Buffered loop outputs. What goes in is what comes out. It's like having a little signal amplifier built in there. It gives it a little bump on the way out on that output. This is all of this is where MCA88 really differs from other systems that you're seeing out there today, streaming systems. Today's conventional streaming systems where you got just a, you know, like a hockey puck sitting in the middle of on a table somewhere listening to music, you know, one of those in every room. This is a different type of streaming system. You can actually connect and control other source equipment. You can power other devices on and off. You can skip tracks, change channels, all kinds of stuff when you use a system with the MC88 controller. Now, these digital source inputs on the back, these guys right here, they take the place of source number 3, 4, and 5. If you go in and configure in web config to use these digital outputs right here, then you will have you'll still have 8 sources, okay? You select either 3, 4, and 5 analog or 3, 4, and 5 digital, okay? It's not 8 plus 3, it's either or, all right? Just want to make sure we get that clear before we move on here. So you can connect up to 3 digital audio sources. Perfect for integrating devices that have ignored analog audio. You know, things like Blu-ray, Apple TV, cable boxes, things like that. You know, everybody they just think about digital because that's what they're all about. Both coaxial and optical audio inputs are available on this guy, and so as I mentioned, you configure source inputs number 3, 4, and 5 as analog or digital in WebConfig. Now, when you add this MBX-PRE to your MCA88, you are setting up one of the best streaming systems in the marketplace today. This is state-of-the-art. Processing on this streamer is lightning fast, and so paired up with the MCA88, it can provide up to 48 zones of state-of-the-art streaming throughout any home. So with the digital inputs, that's what you use it for. Like right here, you have a digital output from that MBX-PRE, and you run that guy to the digital input here, and then you make sure your network connections are all made, your XTS down here, and then your Ethernet connection from your controller. So these guys all live on the same network. They all discover each other right over that network and provide state-of-the-art streaming. The MBX-PRE, as I mentioned, next-gen processor, ultra-fast and responsive, controllable with the My Russound app and the XTS touchscreen. It's compatible with Alexa and Google Assistant. A matter of fact, for the MBX-PRE, we really recommend that you go in and set that up, do all your network setup using Google Home app. It's a great way to do it. And also, you have your onboard browser-based web config from your smartphone or tablet to go in and just set this guy up on the first time setup. What you're going to do is when you go in to set this guy up, you're going to go into web config and navigate to setup in the menu options, and under device mode, you just select source mode right there. Select source mode under general settings right there. And then you're going to name your MBX. You go down here and just call it whatever you want, kitchen, living room, bedroom, whatever you want to call it. And then AirPlay password is optional. You can either enter an AirPlay password here or just leave it blank and move on. And then you have to configure your controller to see this guy. So you navigate to configuration, source settings. You can name your MBX here. If you've already named it before, then you're good to go. But under source type, you just select Russound Media Streamer, and then guess what? You're done. That's it. Now, there's a new firmware available. This just was released on Friday. First time I talked about it was on yesterday's webinar. It's for MBX series, MCA series, and XTS Plus. This will address stability and configuration issues with MBX when it's partnered up with an MCA and XTS or XTS Plus. Update, existing MBX. There's a little bit, there's some reliability improvements built in here on this firmware update. Improvements to TuneIn and SiriusXM and Apple AirPlay, where there were a little bit of stability and configuration issues. That's all been fixed. Existing installations, if you have an 88 system out there or a Russound system out there, then you're not using or you're not upgrading to MBX Streamer with it, you don't need to do these updates. These updates are only for systems using MBX, okay? And here's your firmware updates right here. You might want to do a print screen of this and put it with your Russound file so you know what's going on here, all right? But you have the MBX-PRE, the MBX AMP, the MCA 66 and 88 and 88X and XTS Plus all have a firmware update available right now. And legacy products, XTS, there's one for that. But remember, it's only for systems using MBX. If you have any existing systems out there not utilizing our new streamer, then you don't even have to think about this. It's always recommended, anytime you're setting up a system, of course, first time, to go in or occasionally go in and check for firmware updates. Just make sure you have auto updates set and you don't have to worry about it anymore. For years, people talked about, hey, I wish we could have automatic firmware updates so we didn't have to go to customers and push this through all the time. So we gave you automatic firmware updates. You just go in web config, set it up for auto, and then set it up to happen anytime when the system's not in use, right? Because another update is planned in approximately 2 weeks for both improvements and new features as well. So make sure that you go in there and set that up. So for that reason, we don't recommend updating MBXs, just MBXs now. The latest firmware is only for new installations or existing system issues, okay? MBX and MCA will automatically update. So if auto updates are enabled, which they are by default, as long as you didn't go in there and shut that off, these updates will happen in approximately 2 weeks. No further action required by you guys out there. So XTS and XTS Plus, you just go to the settings menu and click check for updates, and then you'll have it right there, okay? Now, as we mentioned, for network setup, we recommend the way to set it up is using that Google Home app, right? iOS and Android devices both. It guarantees that your MBX is set up for Google Chromecast at the same time. And also by doing it this way, the home's Wi-Fi settings get transferred to your MBX. No SSID or password needed, and the app will transfer the data from your phone automatically, so you don't have to do much anything here. This is a really slick way to go. As a matter of fact, we have a video that we have posted on YouTube for you folks out there. Chromecast. How do you do Chromecast? And then we also have another one called casting. What is casting? So you might want to go in and check that out as well. The cool thing about Chromecast is that when you're using Chromecast with Chromecast built in with your MBX, you don't need your phone or tablet to maintain the streaming. Once it starts on that MBX, the MBX handles it, not your handheld device. So now your phone can become a phone. You can make calls, do text messages, anything you want. And also, cool thing about Chromecast is it is capable of streaming up to 24-bit high-res audio as well. Now, I know a lot of you folks out there have been talking about MQA, master quality audio, and our gear is set up to be able to do that. But as with anything else, you got to get certified for MQA. So we're working on that on the back end right now, and so stay tuned about MQA. We'll have more to talk about. But we're good to go as soon as we get certified for that. So use the Google Home app to create groups. You can do that really easily. Matter of fact, you can use Google Voice to create groups if you want to. And any group you create is instantly available in the Chromecast app. So now let's talk a little bit about, let's get back to the packed in the back on the MCA 88 here. We still got a lot to cover. We got about halfway across, right? So routed IR, let's talk about routed IR. When you look at the back of this guy, you're going to see 6 routed IR emitter ports right there that support IR pass-through. So basically with routed IR, one of the cool things about this is it's basically also known as source-specific IR. What's cool about that is in today's systems, oftentimes you're going to have similar sources in your system that share identical IR codes, right? Maybe 2 cable boxes or something, and you go to control one, and next thing you know, boom, you're controlling the other one at the same time because of IR bleed over between similar sources with identical IR codes. So with routed IR, though, not a problem. Routed IR is source specific. If I had a cable box, for example, on using this IR port right here on one of them, and then number 4 port on the second cable box. When I ask for source number 3 cable box, I know that all IR is only going to spit out of that port right there. I won't have any IR bleed over between these two. So the only place that's be careful is when you have, because we didn't want to line up 8 IR ports across the back here, take up all that real estate, we decided to use port number 1 and 2 to do double duty for to share source number 1, 7, and 2 and 8, right? So therefore, do not put your similar sources with identical IR codes on source number 1 and 7, because you will have IR bleed over. Same with 2 and 8. Split those guys out. Split out those so you don't have any IR conflict between those guys, right? And then there's also a common IR available here. Common IR is always spitting IR. It's a constant, and it's there available for connecting IR, connecting blocks or third-party devices, things like that, when you want to provide IR. Now, also on board with the MCA 88 is a very extensive IR code library. We have IR codes on board here for pretty much any source you might want to connect to this guy. You just go in and, check the IR code, and it'll pop up, just like you do when you're setting up your cable TV or whatever. It's just a code library, and you have 2 or 3 codes there, and you try those 2 or 3 and see which one's the best, right? And but if for any reason the source that you happen to be using, the IR code does not live in the IR code library here, what do you do, right? How do you do that? Well, then you do what's called IR learning. Here you can take your your native remote control for that source and go into IR learning mode, and then you can learn the commands from that remote control into the MCA 88, which will allow you to control that source. And so you can go in and learn, play, stop, track forward, track back, stop, pause, all that kind of stuff. You don't have to learn every single button. You can if you want, but IR learning available through, it's done in web config. Now, your speaker outputs and line connections, as I mentioned, you have 6 powered outputs at 40 watts per channel. So digitally amplified zones number 1 through 6. And then line level and preamp outputs, line level preamp outputs are available for all 8 zones. And what's really cool is that the preamp outputs and speaker outputs are active at the same time. So in any particular zone, I could run speakers from, connect a speaker here, a pair of speakers here to go into zone number 1. Then I could use my preamp output, run that into an amplifier for more speakers in zone number 1, okay? I could do that with every single zone on an MCA 88. I could use, for example, zone number 2, I could run 2 pair of speakers in there and then use the line level output to provide a signal for powered subwoofer in that zone if I want to. So, the versatility is incredible, and it's endless. I could daisy chain amplifiers one after another, or whatever I want to do here. As we mentioned, fixed or variable. This is a RCI's dream, a Russound certified installer's dream for sound and reinforcement and system expansion. It's endless. You can build whatever that customer desires. Now you have a paging input as well. Source number 8, that guy also is a either or. You can either use it as a source input for source number 8 as a music source, or you can use it as a paging input. Then all you got to do is go into web config and configure it as a paging input rather than a source input. And so you do it on source number 8, and you use the right channel only with that, because it's a mono signal, right? When you're doing paging, so it's just a single input, single out. You can interface a third-party paging system right here. All you need to do is take the audio outputs from your third-party telephone system, run it to the input audio in, and then you're going to take the 12-volt trigger from that third-party telephone system and connect it to a 12-volt trigger input on this guy, that page trigger input right there. And then when that trigger sees a page, it will sees a signal, it will mute audio for you and allow you to broadcast that page. So really nice way to go. Doorbell Wi-Fi I put there because a couple installers have told me that's what they use, and it works really well with Russound. So I just threw that in there. maybe give you something to check out. So the 12-volt trigger output, as I mentioned, goes to the page trigger input to trigger a page. A page will, as I mentioned, it interrupts audio for all enabled zones. It can be disabled permanently in web config in each zone if you want, or you can do it temporarily in each zone by using do not disturb. Do not disturb will block any global commands from coming to that zone. And as I mentioned, it's configured in web config. That's where you go in and select source number 8, whether it's going to be paging or whether it's going to be a source. And if you use it as paging, now you only have 7 source inputs available. And if you use Bluetooth, as we showed you earlier right here, now you have only 6 available, okay? Because you're using up number 1 with that one. Common 12-volt trigger output, that's used to trigger additional lamps wherever you need them. It supplies 12-volt DC when any zone is on. So as long as at least one zone is on, that output right there will be it will remain active. And if you shut the entire thing down, all zones, of course, it will shut down at that point. But that is used to trigger any other devices that you may want to add to the system. More Russound amplifiers, things like third-party devices, shades, lighting, all kinds of different things that you might want to trigger, right? Now you also have a home theater trigger input, and this guy, very unique feature here for this one. You're only going to see this on multi-room systems, high-end type stuff, because these belong in homes where you have a separate theater room, and then also so you have a system for your theater room, and then you also have a whole house audio system. And in most cases, what you're going to do is you're not going to get a whole set of sources for your theater room and then another set of sources for your whole house system. So what you're going to do is you're going to split those sources between your multi-room system and your home theater system, right? So now with power management, as you know, all on, all off, right? Well, take for example, if you're done listening to music for the day, you're going to call it a day, you go to your room, you do it all off, and you didn't know someone's in the theater room watching a movie. Well, when you do all off, what happens to the sources that are being provided to that theater room, right? They're also going to shut off, right? Well, if you take the 12-volt DC trigger output from the back of that home theater receiver and you plug it into the 12-volt trigger input right here, as long as this input is seeing 12 volts from that home theater system, that home theater receiver, it will not send the power off command out to those sources. So it delays power management from sending the all off command when that home theater is in use. Pretty smart feature right there. The home theater trigger out is just a pass-through. That's all it is. You can use it to trigger anything you want, amplifiers, anything. It can be used to activate additional devices whenever that home theater is in use. And it's just a little 2-conductor cable. That's all. RS-232, yeah, we know that's a dinosaur right now, it seems. But because most modern systems, of course, opt for IP-based control. And we play nice with all of those guys this way. Control 4, RTI, URC, Key Digital, Fibaro, Pro Control, Amazon Alexa, Google Home, all of that. We play very nicely with all of that stuff. Now your factory reset button here, this guy is for when you take this controller out of the box and you plug it into the network, it's going to assign a DHCP IP address to this guy, and then you go into web config and you set a static IP or IP reservation, whatever, and then you decide you want to change that because you have some kind of IP conflict going on in the system, right? So a 3-second press on that button right there will give you, it'll default your settings back to DHCP, so you can go in and reset that, okay? A 10-second press and hold wipes this guy right out, wipes it clean, that deletes all the personal info, service account settings, passwords, all of that stuff. It will So it just restores everything right back to like out of the box. And then the 88, of course, will reboot automatically when it's ready. It's going to take a few minutes. It's going to go through its thing, you know. But then once that happens, now you're going to have, it'll require a Russound certified installer to go in and reconfigure. He'll have to unlock and reconfigure this. It's going to be just like brand new out of the box when you wipe it out that way, okay? Now, when you're going to be doing multi-controllers, you're going to stack these guys. You can stack up to 6 of them, go all the way out to 48 zones. And the way that you connect these guys to communicate with each other is by way of the RNet link ports to connect up to 5 additional controllers to the main controller, all the way out to 48 zones. And that RNet link passes IR and data between these RNet enabled controllers. And all it is a piece of Cat5 wired to the T568A, and you want to keep that guy 18 inches or less, because you know we talked about IR bleed over and all that kind of stuff a little while ago there. But if you say, for example, you just got I got a 6-footer on my truck, so I'm just going to use that as my IR link. Well, good odds are you may defeat that routed IR. You may run into IR bleed over issues because it's a fairly common problem when people call in and say hey, I'm using routed IR, but it's bleeding over still. What's going on? It's like, okay, tell me about your RNet link cables. What are they? How long are they? Yep, we'll fix that problem. 18 inches or less. It avoids IR bleed over. And then connectivity to controller number 1, and then your sources get cascaded between controllers. And make sure you set all those controller IDs before powering up. On a single controller, you know, you're going to be on controller number 1, right? But as you start to stack controllers, you're going to have number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. So what you're going to do is on the power up sequence in the end, you know, you go in and power up all your sources first, and then you power up the controller number 3, then controller number 2, and the last thing you power up in any Russound system is controller number 1, because now it's going to see everything that's connected to it. And this is kind of how it looks right here. If you take this guy right here, and then you got controller number 1, number 2, number 3. There's your RNet link. Now there's your RCA cables connecting, cascading your source, sharing a source. So I would have a source coming into source number 2 right here, and then it would go out of there. Remember, buffered loop outputs. What goes in is what comes out. And then here to the input, and then what goes in is what comes out. Boom. Up to here. So you would continue that all the way through 6 controllers. Then you would set this guy to controller number 3 right there, controller number 2, controller number 1. And this guy would power up last. Another great way for sound reinforcement in any zone is called zone linking. You know, this is an 8-zone controller amplifier, and you know, most of your systems out there, average system is really more in the way of maybe 4, 6 zones, somewhere in that area. That's kind of seems to be the most common. So in a 8-zone controller, you're going to have a couple of zones left over, maybe, you know, a couple of 40 watt per channel amplifiers sitting there that you're not using. Well, you can use them. Zone linking. You can take any of these and link these zones together, and you can do up to 2 groups. I could do, for example, zone number 1, 2, and 3, link those together as one zone, and then zone number 4, 5, and 6, link those together as one zone. Then I'd have a 2-zone system with 3 pairs of speakers in each zone. Okay, something like that. So, and then you use a single interface to control the entire thing. So it's ideal for systems with fewer but larger zones. It's a great way to go. And it's an installer's dream. Once again, it's the go-to solution for sound reinforcement in a zone. Like in this case right here, I took zone number 5, I linked zone number 6 that wasn't being used, I linked that to zone number 5. Now I have zone number 5 right here, and I have a single keypad plugged into port number 5 right there to control both of these outputs. And now I have 40 watts of channel going to that pair and 40 watts of channel going to that pair. Zone linking. Awesome. Now, these line output connections that we're talking about across here, this is how you would use them. You know, you got zone number 7 and 8 right here. We're going to talk about those guys for just a couple of minutes and show you some configurations that you can do, you know, just an idea of what can be done with this guy. As you know, the last amplifier in the line on board, right, is number 6. So I'm driving a pair of speakers there in zone number 6 with that guy. But I want to just do a single pair of speakers in zone number 7. So I'm just going to run out of number 7 into a nice little A2100 and run a pair of speakers there in zone number 7. Zone number 8, I want to do the same thing, but I'm also going to add a subwoofer here. So that's how you would do that one. So zone number 8, now you got a pair of speakers and a subwoofer. This is a nice little system. Just basically, you could take these two A2100s right here. They're half rack wide, so you could mount these two side by side in a single rack space along with your MCA controller, and that would power all 8 zones right there, right? Or you can do some really cool stuff with it, like this right here. If I want to do like a large zone, maybe a great room or a game room or something, where I want to have all kinds of speakers in there. Okay, I'm in my game room, my pool table, all this. Let's just make believe here. I want 4 pairs of speakers in there, and I want 2 subwoofers. This is how I would do it right here. That's how you would do it. If you want to do it with separate amplifiers, this is a conventional way that the older car stereo guys, you can always tell because they love to have separate amplifiers on every pair of speakers. You know, car stereo, high fail rate, so they always learn that, you know, if a pair of speakers, something happens to them, you can pull that amp. You know, if an amplifier fails, you only lose 1 pair of speakers. The rest of the system is still working, right? So whereas off 1 big amp, you know, multi-channel amp, if a channel fails, you lose the whole system, right? So a lot of guys do this as a safety factor, and then they just build a rack on the wall with all of these amplifiers. Now, if you want to do the same for an outdoor zone, this is what it would look like. Same type of setup, only in this case, you'd have to use outdoor volume controls, and I would set my line out, in this case, to fixed, because I'm using these outboard volume controls. And now I would have 4 pairs of speakers around in the backyard there, and now I'm going to add a couple of in-ground subs as well to go with it. So I have myself a really nice outdoor system here, you know, utilizing 6 of these A2100s. And I can take them and use them in stereo and drive these guys. And of course, we're going to set these guys to 1X, right? Because you have 1 8-ohm load being presented to 1 8-ohm amplifier. So it's 1 times that load. So each one of these, you're going to do 1X on your jumpers in there. And then I want to run a couple of subs. I'm going to run 2 of these guys, each of them in mono to drive each of these subwoofers right here. So I'm running stereo on 4 of them and mono on 2. When I want to run an A2100 in mono, this is how you would do it right here. I got to make sure, number 1, that I use the left channel input only on this guy right here. That's what I'm going to use for mono. I'm going to use the left channel input only. Then I'm going to use the left positive and the right positive as my 2 speaker leads for this particular one. Okay, so, and then I got to make sure I set it in bridge mode right here. And that's how you would do a subwoofer with this guy. This is okay. That's how you're going to power a sub with this as well. Now, if I wanted to do it all with a 1 amplifier, I could run a D1650. I could use this guy instead, off of any controller, off of any zone output. If I wanted to do like in this case, I got 8 pairs of speakers in a single room off of a single amplifier right here, you know. And I could also run speakers right off of my MCA 88. This happens to be a MCA 66 right here, but same idea. So that's what you're looking at right there if you want to do a single amp instead of a whole bunch of amplifiers. So, and I know your wire management will be much, much nicer than mine. Now, if I want to do bridge mode on the 850, 1650, like we were just looking at, in that case, now what I have to do is I'm going to take, for example, 1 section of that MCA 88, and I'm going to, again, use just the left signal on this guy. And then I'm going to use the left plus, in this case though, the right negative instead of the right positive. Those will be my speaker leads, and then make sure I set it into bridge mode right there. And now I can drive a subwoofer off here, do the same on another section, drive another sub off of there, right? How would that really happen in real life? I prefer this method on outdoor zones like this right here, okay? If I'm going to be doing an outdoor zone, say for example, got a nice big backyard here, I want to deck this guy out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pair of speakers and I'm going to put them right there by the patio, so we have some music right there on the patio. And then I'm going to take another pair and I'm going to run them out here by this field out here where the kids go out and play out in this lawn area. And then I'm going to put a pair at that end of the pool right there, and then another pair at this end of the pool, right? And then I want to put a pair in the changing rooms and where all of the showers are, and the game room and all that kind of stuff, a little activity area, changing area, shower area, whatever. I'm going to put a pair of speakers in there too, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my D850 and I'm going to use, oh, you can't forget the hot tub. Got to have speakers by the hot tub. You can get out of work after a long day, going to sit in the hot tub, have a couple of cold ones, you know, you got to have some music there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that first section of my MCA 88 to power these two speakers right here, that pair. Then I'm going to use that section to power that pair. I'm going to use that 50 watt per channel section to drive that pair right there. I'll use that 50 watt per channel section to drive that pair. I'll use that one to drive the patio. And then I'll use this section here, 50 watts per channel, to drive a pair of speakers at my hot tub. Then I bridge this section and this section together to run a couple of subwoofers out there buried in the ground as well. So now I have 6 pairs of speakers and 2 subwoofers, all off of a single D1650 amplifier. Maybe run off of zone number 8 line output. So how cool is that, right? You can build beautiful landscape audio systems. And for landscape speakers, we have our brand new AW4s. These are 4-inch satellite, all weather, and these guys are awesome. They are not built to be price pointed, cheap, or anything like that. They're built to sound awesome, and they're built to last. And you can run these either in 8 ohms off of a regular MCA 88 system, or you can use them in a 70-volt commercial system as well. They have a 70-volt switch and 100-volt switch as well. And then with all of the various tap settings. Because if you were to use, say, for example, on an outdoor zone, if you were driving it in mono using a X-Zone 70V, for example, you could do up to 120 speakers of these speakers at the if you tap them at 2 watts each. Think about that. That is unbelievable. We also have the AW10. That's the landscape sub I was talking about. You can easily add great deep bass to any system out there. It's a full band pass. All that means is that the woofer is inside the box. You can't see it. It's playing through a port. So it's called a band pass subwoofer. 10-inch woof in that box, completely waterproof. This guy, once again, you can use it in an 8-ohm system in stereo, or you can use it in mono in a 70-volt or 100-volt system as well. Now let's have a look at how we're going to control our MCA 88 system. We have different types of interfaces that you can use. Got hardwire types, got the app, got all that. Let's run through those real quick. SLK, that's a single gang. If you want to use keypads in a lower priority area, such as maybe a laundry room, you know, something like that. You don't care about controlling and playing with your system. You just want to do volume up and down, maybe change a track or two, maybe change a radio station. And then your MDK-C6, full function, double gang keypad, anything you can do with your it's full system control across the board, only in an in-wall keypad. And also with these guys, pay attention to a company called WallSmart. WallSmart makes these beautiful flush mount kits for these guys, so you don't use these trim plates at all. The only thing you see in the wall is this piece right here. WallSmart, just go to wallsmart.com, select Russound, and you'll see beautiful in-wall kits for these guys. Also XTS, same thing. And XTS Plus is the new model for this. This guy does not connect directly to the controller, but it does connect to the network. And this guy connects to the network, and they discover each other over the network. That's how this guy happens, right? So if you, for wiring on your MDK and your SLK, this is how you're going to do that. You're going to have a work box where from the centralized location where your MCA 88 is located, you're going to run Cat5 and 16.4 from that location right to the work box. Okay, 2 Cat5, you never know. Maybe one for system expansion. Maybe when you go to plug in that keypad, you find out that Cat5 is bad. Well, you got another one sitting right there. Always run a couple of Cat5. You can always tuck one in the back there as a surface loop. And then you mount your speakers in the ceiling, run your 16.2 from your speakers back to the work box. Then you splice that 16.2 and 16.4 together right there. Splice it together, stick it in the back of the box, shove your keypad in there. Now you have a service loop right in the back of every keypad in every zone. So you could take that speaker wire, run it all the way out around if you want, but run it to here. You're going to have a service loop. You can get at those speaker wires anytime you want for system improvements, system upgrades, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, leave yourself a place to work. SLK, as I mentioned, single gang, low priority, 5-character LCD, volume, source, zone, and favorites. You know, that's basic transport functions. Really nicely styled single gang keypad. MDKC6, full function, all on, all off. Do not disturb, party mode, favorite 1, favorite 2, auxiliary IR input on the back. That's for in case this keypad is located somewhere maybe behind the listener or something, where or in an area of the room where it's not forward of the listener. So when they point that remote control, you know, they're so what you do is just take an IR bug, plug it in the back of this guy, and run it to forward of the listener and mount it somewhere in the rack, and then they'll be able to control this guy, even though it's out of sight, out of mind. Okay. Also, built-in clock, sleep timer, alarm features, all that stuff, all built into the MDKC6. If you're going to use MDKC6, the way to really do it is buying it in a kit, the K288 kit. Then you get everything you need all in one box. All you need to do is add an MBX streamer, and you'll have state-of-the-art system. So it includes the wall plates, the remote control, IR mirrors, rack ears, all that stuff, all included. K288 kit. That's the way to buy it. The brand new XTS Touch Plus touchscreen. It's the app in the wall. That's what that is. It runs an embedded version of the My Russound app, and it works exclusively with MBX, MCA, and Extreme. And PoE allows XTS Plus to receive power over the same communication, and communication over the same connection. So it requires only a single Cat5 run to a single gang location, work box or P-ring, whatever. And then, as I mentioned, if you have a PoE switch, you can connect directly to that switch, you know, but if you happen to have a non-PoE switch, then you're going to use a PoE injector in line. So you're just going to pick up right there and go there. And that's how you're going to power that XTS Plus. And it's got a larger display, 5-inch now, and a capacitive touchscreen, just like you use that you see on smartphones and tablets. We got the same type of screen on ours now, and adjustable brightness and timeout settings. That does run that My Russound app, and it can control any zone in a Russound system. It's got a quad-core A53 Cortex processor. That's the heart of it. So increased memory, more versatility for future updates, and we have them coming too. Built-in proximity sensor, so now the thing wakes up when you walk up to it. Other than that, it's not always on, you know, emitting light into the room. It will shut off, and then when you walk up to it, it will turn on. And also much less power consumption with the more efficient 802.30 AF compatible power supply as well. The My Russound app, that guy, you can control everything. All your sources, settings, metadata, album art, everything. And all the screens match. The XTS Plus, the app, the phone, the tablet, they all match. So it's a seamless experience from one to the next. And within that My Russound app, we have some new features. A lot of features will be rolling out here as well, so keep your eyes open for that. Fast and intuitive with easy room grouping. When you use the new My Russound app, you can easily get to recently played items, album art, navigation, Spotify Connect. You put it in a preset, and then you don't have to launch that Spotify launcher there. And also you can go to different positions on tracks, position and seek, go to any spot on a track or podcast, what have you. Pretty cool stuff. And also now support for these brand new features, brand new music services that are included now. We have Tidal and Deezer that we've added to the mix now. And also Chromecast built in. That's going to provide you with a whole bunch of other music services that are now available. So when you go in and set all this up, though, web config, okay? That's what you're going to use to set up the system now. When you go in and now you got everything all set up, everything's plugged in, all that kind of stuff. Now you got to remember though, if you're installing this on a job site with no internet access, make sure that you do all this before you take it to the job site, because there's a couple of things you need to do. Number one, you got to unlock this guy. So you're going to have to obtain the IP address, and then you're going to have to open up a web browser, open up web config, put the IP address into web config, and it will connect with that controller. Now you can go in and unlock that controller, and then you can go in now and check for the latest firmware updates, and then now you go in and configure it zone by zone according to the way that you laid it out during the job walk with your customer. And the best way to obtain the IP address, most of the guys in the field use Fing. It's just simple, it's easy, and it gives you a lot of great information. Router brand and model, switch brand and model, all that kind of stuff. So it really tells you a lot about the network in that place. So it helps you set that up. Now make sure when you're setting it up on a network, though, you pay attention to firmware and all of your network connections, because the most common problems that we get in tech support are caused by network configuration, usually on an ISP provided modem router, but out-of-date firmware is common. Just set up automatic updates, that's all you need to do. If possible, don't use those ISP provided modem routers. Their incompatible settings cause connecting and communication issues with your Russound system. So a dedicated system, a dedicated network, wireless 802.11n or 802.11ac compatible router is recommended. And wireless works great. I mean, especially with our streamers, we are completely, totally Wi-Fi certified. It's awesome stuff. Great Wi-Fi performance with MBX. Wireless does work great, but hardwire network devices whenever you can, because it's going to be better. Just remember, these guys have sole control over those settings in that ISP modem, so they can reset, initialize, or factory. They can push out anything they want. They can even replace that unit anytime, and they push automatic updates, default all your settings that you put in there. And that's when we get these phone calls and tech support. Russound system was working yesterday. What happened? Well, guess what? Thank your ISP provider for that one. So keep a few of these generic modems, on your truck so that you can swap them out. If you have non-bundle services, you can do that. But if the customer has cable, bundle cable services, you got to use that guy, right? So if you're attempting to configure that ISP router, that ISP provided modem router, we don't recommend it, and it's not always possible. But tech support tells me the best way to get performance is make sure that UPnP is enabled, make sure multicast is enabled, make sure IGMP is enabled, and WMM, you want to enable that as well. IGMP proxy, IGMP snooping, multicast filtering, and WMM should all be disabled. Now, when you're on that network and you're going to set it up, now you can go in and unlock this guy. Connect to and unlock your MCA series via the IP address using web config. All you do is go in and put in your RCI credentials right there, Russound certified installers. Do you know there's 10,000 10,500 of you guys out there now. That's what we have on the books right now, 10,500 RCIs. Keep it coming, guys. Web config, you can go in and assign zone and source names, network configuration, automatic firmware updates, zone volume trim. You can disable all on in any zone if you want to, enable or disable all on, all off type stuff. Source type and source volume trim in there. You can switch between your digital and analog inputs on the back. Source and zone linking as well, like we talked about. That's all done in web config. Plus IR source programming for sources where the IR code does not live on the onboard IR library. That's when you go in and do learned IR programming. Plus macros, you can do up to 10-step macros in here. Macros, it's a string of control commands that execute sequentially off of a single button press. You know, what a way to set up a system, make it easy for your customer. One button press instead of several. And save and load configuration, enable, disable paging, keypad button configuration, power management, backup and restore, all of this. These are all done in web config. You can really customize this system perfectly to the customer's needs. Okay, now it's time to light this guy up, okay? We've done everything we can do, and so now we're going to light it up. This is what you need to do. Here's the procedure every single time. The system is done. It's finally done. We're going to run some final tests here, and we're going to hand the keys over to the customer, all right? So first thing, make sure, connect all the sources, speakers, network, keypads, everything. Make sure everything is connected. Make sure all connections are solid. Make sure your RJ45 ends have been tested and verified. Make sure everything works. For multiple controllers, make sure you set the controller IDs before you fire it up. And make sure that your RNet link cables are the right size, right? And make sure they go from in to out, out to in. Don't matter. It's two-way communication. Cool. Plug in and power up your sources first, and then the controllers last. That's what you want to do. Make sure the brain is the last thing. Once you get done firing everything up, the power LEDs on the front panel of each controller will be lit up, and they'll be bouncing around like crazy, and then they'll cycle until the controller is booted, and then they'll go out. Now you log into that controller using either the IP address or the host name. The host name is right on the bottom of the chassis, by the way. And then you unlock that system by putting in your RCI credentials. First thing you're going to do, check for that latest firmware update, right? Make sure that you update it to the very latest. Now configure that system zone by zone, every single little thing in there. Does this room want paging? Does it want all on, all off? All that kind of stuff. Just go in and set it up every little bit. Now you're going to do the walkthrough. You're going to check all of your zone keypads, check operation, make sure every function on every keypad works. Make sure you discover anything that might not work before your customer does. Just make sure when you hand the keys over, it is flawless. Check for functional IR pass-through. That's going to be big, because especially if they have a lot of legacy sources connected to this guy, which a lot of your tweak high-end guys, they do. They have a lot of stuff. I met a guy who he has everything that he's ever bought pretty much hooked up into his system, and been audiophile for years. So make sure IR works on all of those sources, and learn IR from the ones that you need to. But here's the biggest part now. You're done. You're all done. You're standing there looking around going, man, this thing is just, what a job this was. This was just awesome. But now what you're going to do, you got to sit in every single room, sit there for a while, and just listen to and equalize every room carefully. Take your time, you know, listen to different types of music, loud, soft, in between. What's the clip point in that room? Do I need to, you know, set the volume back a little bit, volume trim, things like that? What do I need to do here? Make the system bulletproof, make it sound awesome in every room. Some rooms are acoustically live, you know, they got a lot of glass and wood and walls and no furniture, hardly anything in there. That room is live. Music is, signal's gonna bounce everywhere. Other rooms are acoustically dead, you know. They have low ceilings, they have a lot of carpet and furniture and draperies and all these things that are going to eat up high frequencies. You know, if you just have all your Bass and treble controls flat, you know. Some rooms are going to sound very bright. Some are going to sound very muddy. So you got to EQ and listen to every single room. You only got that one chance to make a first impression. When you hand those keys over, if that customer doesn't have a big smile on their face the first time they light it up, it's a very disappointing experience. It's very awkward. And you're thinking, shit, I failed. Oh no, shoot, I failed. But you didn't, because the system is awesome. You did everything right. You listened to it. Now you train your customer how to use this thing and take your paycheck, and out the door you go on to your next Russound system. Nice. The reason we do Russound, profitability. Russound products, they do not function unless they're unlocked by an authorized Russound dealer. Our products are only available through you guys. We protect you guys and your margins. Products are only available through professional integrators. Never direct to the consumer. We don't bypass you guys, go straight to the end user like our competitors do. We want you to make money. It's all about margin. It's all about this whole thing. We've been supporting the installer since 1967. We're not going to stop now. We're going to continue, regardless of all the wireless and all that kind of stuff going on. We still believe in wire, and we believe in the installer. The free native app, it's free. I mean, no licenses required, nothing. You also, very fast, easy setup process, web config. We're not talking PC power tools here. This is a follow the wizard, you know, easy stuff from your phone or tablet. Also, streaming capabilities, AirPlay, Bluetooth, unbelievable library of network content, different internet radio stations. The library is incredible. So great streaming capabilities, MBX with the next gen processors, lightning fast, great way to do it. So all of these trainings, all of these webinars, again, are posted eventually on our dealer training site. So if you ever want to review it or maybe share it with some of your coworkers or something, just russound.com/DLR training. That's all. And we probably got about 35, 36 of them in there now. So, you know, anything you want to learn about, you know, maybe if you're going to be doing an installation and you want to get your little refresher, just pull one of these guys up while you're having lunch and listen to me ramble, and hopefully remind you of a few things that you might have overlooked. This is who we are, how and when and where to find us, and so you take a screenshot of this one too if you want to. This will get you in touch with every department in Russound. So that's who we are right there. And I want to thank you for joining us today for MCA 88 Locked and Loaded. Enjoy your day, and thank you for your business.